Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
First today, let's talk about Jeremy Corbyn. He gave a wide-ranging interview on the Marr Show a little earlier here on BBC One. Let's just listen to what the Labour leader had to say.
My question with respect was about sympathy action and whether you would remove that legislation.
Sympathy action is legal in most other countries, and I think it should also be legal here. But remember this.
So you would repeal those Tory laws?
Yes, of course. Nobody willingly goes on strike. They go on strike as an ultimate weapon. The number of strikes is actually very small. It's an ultimate weapon that is used. But anyone who goes on strike is making an enormous sacrifice. They don't get paid. They suffer a great deal as a result of it. And so let's look at the causes of people being upset rather than the symptoms.
Well, Nick, an action policy-packed interview this morning with Andrew Marr on the Falklands, on Islamic State, on secondary strike action, and even on the idea that maybe we could keep Trident but just not put any missile warheads on the missiles.
Yes, I felt all nostalgic. I was back to a teenager in the 1980s. I remember these arguments in the early 1980s. Michael Foot put them in that manifesto for the 1983 general election. Now, the point is that
Jeremy... He was very robust on the Falklands, though.
He was very robust on the Falkland Islands, absolutely. He said he knew more about fascism than Tam Dalyell, who had told him not to side with Margaret Thatcher. Absolutely right. I mean, the point for Jeremy Corbyn is that he has a mandate from the Labour Party to put forward these arguments. He had a 60% vote. It is very clear what Jeremy Corbyn thinks about nuclear weapons. He's been a member of CND since 1966, so he has a mandate. The challenge for Jeremy Corbyn is to put forward these ideas in a way that appeals beyond those new members of the Labour Party to the electorate as a whole who have concerns about security of the nation. For example, he's talking about possibly having the successor submarines in the Trident system without nuclear weapons. People look at that and say, well, what's that about? Actually, that's the Japanese system. They talk about how in Japan they have what is known as the bomb in the basement. They're a non-declared nuclear state, but they could sort of arm themselves with nuclear weapons within minutes if they needed to. So that's what he's talking about. Sounds good in the Labour Party, but he needs to sell that to the country as a whole.
It's clear that a lot of what Mr. Corbyn says has the support of the grassroots, particularly the new ones that have joined the Labour Party. It's equally clear that a lot of this does not have the support of the Parliamentary Labour Party. That's the constant problem that has yet to be squared.
And I can't see a way that it will be squared, and I don't think many of the Labour MPs can either. I mean, Corbyn's problem, and in a way it's an admirable one, is that he's determined not to resile from things that he's said in the past. So, for example, on the Falklands, he's being entirely consistent with what he was saying in interviews back in 2013 when he didn't actually matter, and how he is now repeating those views. The problem is that now Corbyn does matter, and actually if you look at the Falklands, the last time there was a vote of Falkland Islanders, only 3 individuals voted to change the system of administration, so he is way out of step with people living there on that one as well.
Mr. Corbyn sets out his left-wing stall on these issues. That's what he thinks. And bit by bit, he's taking his time. He's doing it astutely. He is taking the Labour Party in his direction. That was part of the purpose, I would suggest, of this morning's interview.
Yeah, nobody can question his right and his political mandate to say what he says. The question for me is, how low is the Labour vote floor now? Because if you go into a general election with a leader who says something like, let's have the return of secondary picketing, and that's not the most cockamamie idea in the manifesto. He's also talking about renewing the Vanguard subs without having warheads on them. I think he flirted with the idea of a so-called reasonable accommodation with Buenos Aires over the Falklands. If you go into an election on that ticket, knowing that you have a white working class base, which is already flirting with UKIP, how low can Labour sink? And for a long time I've believed, as Isabel just said, that no, they can't get rid of him. Technically and constitutionally it's impossible. But maybe politics is like water and it just finds a way to go around obstacles.
Maybe these ideas will turn out to be very popular with the voters.
I think they'll turn out to be very popular with the Labour membership, but every general election since 1983 would suggest to us over the last 3 decades that these ideas are outside the mainstream. Jeremy Corbyn says, no, there is a new world out there. I sort of tapped into that during my campaign, thousands of people packing out those meetings. Well, let's see. You know, we've got this electoral test in May. Let's see how these ideas go down outside the Labour Party.
All right, we will indeed, and we'll come back to that and more.